You're listening to FFOP Radio.
Reach the
And welcome to the show. My name's Dave, and this is a fistful of podcasts from FFOPradio.com. Back for another great week. Full disclosure, guys, we had some alcohol. I want to get that out of the way immediately, so in case you're like, oh my god, he's having a stroke. No, we just did a shot. It's a special episode, guys. It's not your average episode. It's not your everyday episode. What we're doing here is I got a special guest, and we're going to do something special. Man, that shit is hitting me. I can feel it, and you can probably hear it in my voice. Please help me in welcoming Sean, my buddy here, not back, but on the show for the first time. So, Sean, first of all, say hello so our audience can hear your voice.
Hello, everybody. How we doing?
Perfect. See, now that is a fucking radio persona. You had me worried in a minute because I thought we were going to be all whispery, but that's good. Keep the energy up.
Oh, no, believe it or not, being pretty shy, I can actually get out there.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Most of the time, you put somebody in front of a microphone, and it's like putting someone in front of a camera lens. You get, like, weird mannequin sort of actions and, like they're kind of human, but not quite there. Anyway, moral of the story is, Sean, you are, an advocate or involved in this group. Do you want to give us a little information?
Sure. About a month ago, I actually just joined a group on Facebook called OUR. It's a acronym for Operation Underground Railroad, founded by Tim Ballard, who was a Homeland Security agent. Mm-hmm. Back in 2013, decided he wanted to do a little bit more, become a stronger advocate against human trafficking. Okay. Focusing on child trafficking specifically because there's such a huge epidemic for it right now. Mm-hmm. So, and that's something I've always been very passionate about and something I wanted to get into. Yeah,
so I figured, I'm always looking for, here's the thing. This was like a layup because when you were like, hey, man, like we're supporting the children, I'm like, you know what I fucking love? To Catch a Predator. So if we can push your message and also I can make someone watch To Catch a Predator with me and talk about it, it's a layup. And plus the theming is like perfect. It's like a zebra cake for a jungle birthday party.
Oh yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to break down To Catch a Predator. I'm going to try and get us to go through the whole series. It'll depend on how this first one is received, obviously. Maybe the next one I'll do sober. Who knows?
Interesting fun fact, if you ask my wife, I was looking at some old Facebook photos when I just had a mustache. I looked like I belong on Dateline.
Yeah, that's the thing, though. You see a lot of mustaches on To Catch a Predator, but they're always like the dad stashes or like the weird gym stitch. So, but here's the thing, everybody. We're starting at episode 3. So the first 2 To Catch a Predators were uninteresting to me personally, simply because there's no police. Like the dudes show up, Chris Hansen's all like weird and sweaty, and it's like, hey man, you're a predator, and I'm Chris Hansen, and they're like, I'm out of here, and then they'll run down the street, and the camera chases them, and you're like, where are the cops? God damn it! So we're starting To Catch a Predator 3. So this is one of the ones I'm not super duper familiar with. Like this isn't one of my greatest hits because back me up, Sean. It was not what you really want. It was kind of a letdown.
Yeah.
You want to see, like, Predator shows up. He gets taken out. Predator, boom, boom, boom. You want to see a rapid fire of dudes hitting, like, asphalt after Chris Hansen's like, all right, bye.
And there's a couple of them that were like that, but for the majority, they were just very, okay.
It's still, like, they're feeling things out. It's very, like, like, the bones are there, but the flesh is still building. So, that's the thing. So, like, this one, like, they started out and they're like, basically doing a recap of the first 2. They're like, yeah, we were doing this and we caught all these dudes. And, I love Stone Phillips and Ann Curry. Oh my God. I think Ann Curry is super hot. Mm-hmm. I think Stone Phillips is a cool dude. And Ann Curry is super hot. But so it's like them, and they're basically going over the last investigations, and they're like, yeah, so here's what we did. And they show that my favorite clip of like the first 2 episodes is that dude running away behind the umbrella, and he's like, like trying to hide from the camera. So they talk to like, you know, basically this one takes place in Riverside, California. And they talk to like the ADA there. And it's like straight out of SVU almost. They like do all the glamour shots if we're walking outside the courtroom and everything. And her name is Michelle Paradise. And it's always so funny because like there's obviously not one type of predator out there. And so Chris Hansen's like, do you believe they're from all walks of life? And she's like, yeah, I totally believe it, dude.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Obviously. Like it's that you're not going to see the same like cookie cutter, like the Hamburglar character coming in to be like, nah, I come for your children every time. I mean, they definitely do fit a stereotype because they definitely, there's their share of dad mustaches and all the weird stuff. But so I'm just going to preface and say, like, these dudes are pretty weak. Like, as far as interviews go, so the first dude, Kurt Lemke, they just start rolling him in. And this one's edited weird, too. Because it's like a chunk where you see the first half, like the Predators come in and you see all the interviews. And then there's a second chunk where there's more Predator interviews. And they don't show the cops busting people until the very end.
Right. You get to like halfway through the episode.
And I'm
finally...
like, oh, come on, man. Take some dudes down to the ground. Mm-hmm. Like, don't get me wrong. I love the revelation moment where like Chris Hansen pops out from behind the curtain and goes, hey, how's it going? And the guy goes, ah, like, obviously, like, you're looking for a 12-year-old? But it's so, I don't know. I feel like maybe the more like in the later episodes and like To Catch a Predator was like a household name. People were just maybe more willing to accept it and like sit through the interview because they knew they were going to get arrested.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, I might as well like, I'm going to make this interview 45 minutes because it's going to be the sweetest 45 minutes of my life before I go out and get my face pushed in the sand by a bunch of angry cops.
I know I made a mistake here, so you're going to enjoy my mistake.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so anyway, like that's the problem is like this one's not so good. I do like this like the sheriff. Because here's like the running theme with To Catch Predators. Chris Hansen always sits down and talks to all the like the cops that are involved, and they're always very dry, very yes, that's correct, you know, but this, that, and the other. This guy I feel like has some personality. He's like, these guys are weirdos, and we were throwing them in this RV, and we told them not to run away because they're like, you're a pedophile, so you stay in this RV, and we're coming back for you. Like, I feel like he's the only one who has any sort of character. So that's a good part about this episode.
And then they're catching so many of them that the sheriff's finally like, you know what? I had to start throwing a bunch of them in the RV.
Yeah, it's so
to start
funny.
getting some of my deputies back.
Okay, so let's just jump into it. This is already immediately dated because when you watch it, it's like, oh, our predators prowling Yahoo, MySpace, or Teen Spot, and you're like, what year is this? Like, I feel like that's almost akin to like, don't let your kids go to the butcher because there's like an evil wizard. Like, MySpace is so old timey. It feels.
You remember Yahoo IM?
Yes, I loved Yahoo IM. That was the place to go and like talk to strangers about things that didn't matter, and then you could just be like, well, bye everybody. The early days of the internet were weird, and that's what I like about all these predators is like they're very low effort, they're very surface level. Like these aren't dudes who you're gonna find like wearing an eye patch and smoking a cigar, like running a train through the middle of the jungle full of like human captives. These are like low effort, like, oh yeah, I'm a dad with a 42-year-old body and a weird mustache. Like, I'm looking for a 12-year-old who's really ready to get down.
Right.
And it's so weird. So whatever. So and also in this one, for every episode, they have one like excuse that gets the decoy out of the view of the predator. And this one's really weak. It's always like, I gotta go finish brushing my teeth, or I got something. Like, here's the thing. Each predator is a new predator. You don't need to keep the running thing of the teeth. Make it different every time. But every time it's like, I gotta go brush my teeth. And it's the same. It's Del Harvey from Perverted Justice, who gets to play the boy and the girl, and she's like obviously the worst decoy, I think. Like she's just like so bad. And it's like, oh, I gotta go brush my teeth, and all these dudes are like, oh, okay. Like if you show up and you're already like nervous, you're doing something crazy, illegal, and weird and gross, and you show up, and I can't imagine like the feelings that you're experiencing, and then just like have the person you're meeting disappear to be like, you gotta go brush my teeth. Isn't like these dudes will just plow through warning signs.
Well, saying the fact that like they're literally just walking into
a strange house.
A street through a curtain. Not
Yeah.
even a front door. They're
No.
not being let in. It's just a blatantly, hey, come on in, door's open.
Another weird thing, like, I don't know why this is a thing, but in all of the episodes, they always have them go through the back door. I don't know why. Every episode, every investigation across the country, like, it's always like, go around the back because the front door. Why? Like, is Frag sitting in the foyer, like, playing jacks? Like, why can't you come in the front? Like, what the fuck? Whatever. That's just a nitpick I have.
See, and then, I mean, yeah, sure, they always even tell them, my parents aren't home.
Yeah,
Why not come through the front door? Nobody's home.
It's like there are so many warning signs. Like, if you show up to, like, a 12-year-old's house and there are, like, brownies on the table, like, warning bells, dude. Like, what 12-year-old is like, I'm gonna bake up something sweet for the 47-year-old coming over tomorrow. What the fuck? Are you kidding? So, whatever. So the first dude, Kinky Man in Corona. This dude.
This is his actual username.
Yeah, his Kinky Man in Corona, his real name is Walter Babs. He's 43, and he has got, like, the dad flat top, the dad mustache. He tucked his t-shirt into his pants, into his jeans. Like, this is how big of a nerd this dude is. And he's just showing up to be like, hey, yeah, I'm a teacher. I teach high school and I'm coming to bang a 13-year-old. And he says some funny stuff. Because when Chris comes out, he's like, hey, how's it going? He's like, I need you to execute me. Like, he immediately wants him.
Right out the gate. It's like, I know I'm here. I know it's
like,
wrong. Just
he wants to get shot out of a cannon.
Me and execute me.
He's so, like, I don't even know. He's like your stereotypical, like, if you imagine, like, if you just say man, picture a man, that's this dude. He's, like, so generic and so, like, white bread. But like, and that's the weird thing about him is, like,
man.
Yeah, these dudes just off the street are like, and then he starts reading the chat. And that's the thing. These aren't interviews. It's just so they can read these filthy things they said to these children in front of them. He never asks a question aside from, like, so how old the girl you were supposed to be meeting?
Oh, I thought she was 18.
Yeah, I love the lies.
I was told.
I get the lies because you show up and then, like, this dude shows up in his suit and you're like, what the fuck? Like, obviously you're not thinking you're about to get your throat slit or anything like that because he's wearing a suit and you're relatively comfortable. But just, like, the feeling of these dudes must, it's a roller coaster ride. I've seen it a million times and it gets me every time. When Chris Hansen comes out and these guys go, oh my God. So the next dude, Uncommon Sense 2. And this is one of the craziest things where Chris Hansen's like, going a little bit about more into perverted justice or whatever. He's like, this is Del Harvey. She can play a girl. And they they bring up her audio. She's on the phone. She's like, yeah, I like to smell good. And I'm kind of obsessive about it. And then Chris Hansen's like, or be a boy. She's like, do you know anything about, like, skateboards? And it's like the most generic, like, boy and girl stuff. She's like, I like rainbows and kittens. Like, this is how she plays a girl. She's like, I like candy and playing hopscotch. And this is her as a boy. And she's like, I like skateboarding and playing pogs. Like, it's the flimsiest, like, it's the most generic, like, pretend you're a kid. And she's like, okay, I like hopscotch and going on trips to the zoo. But they keep getting touted as, like, these are experts in pretending to be children.
If these are experts, I'm very nervous on what they're going to actually do when predators get smart.
It's so, like, that's the thing. They're like, these people are experts, but it's always, like, the lamest, like, anybody could see through this. Like, it's whatever. So the next dude who shows up, like, they really play up the fact that his dong is pierced. They're like, this is Uncommon Sense too. Like, he's not only got, like, 3 dong piercings that he brags about, but he's also, like, already a sex offender. Mm-hmm. And he's the first guy who ever brings anything to like the investigation with the cops. Like, he just, like, Houdini's a sixer of Mike's out of his jacket. Like, he walks in, hands in his pockets. How was he keeping that thing in there? And he just, like, woo, David Blaine, sixer of Mike's hard lemonade. And he just throws it on the counter there.
That magical orifice.
Yeah, and I'm like, what the? And so when Chris comes out, he's like, hey man, what's with the sixer of the stuff? And he's like,
it's for her mom.
Yeah,
I wasn't bringing it for her.
Yeah, I was talking to it, like, because you know how fun 13-year-olds are to hang around with. So I was talking to one, and she was like, can you pick me up some wine coolers for my mom? And he's like, I've got the chat right here. And he's like,
that's not what you said.
But
I know what she said. That's not what you said.
It's so. And so the next dude is my favorite, Mr. B. Jones. Do you remember him?
Vaguely, yeah.
B. Jones, he shows up, bizarre choice. He shows up in the middle of the night wearing like a loud Hawaiian shirt, a yellow Hawaiian shirt, but he wears like a black hoodie over it. So it's just this loud collar and this loud, like little strip of cloth right by his waist.
Yellow strip.
Yeah. And I'm like, why, dude? Like, what is going on? And he's got like no neck. He's got like, a triangle head. And I kind of, in as much as I can, feel bad for the dudes who bring bags and bags of shit.
Oh, yeah.
Because Chris always makes him go through all of it. He's like, what do you got in the bag? And he's like, okay. Just some stuff. And he's like, oh, some stuff? I was like, what? And I get the other stuff. I get the pie because it was asked for. I get the whipped cream because that's what every sexual deviant loves. I get the condoms. I don't get the Tums. Like, I don't get, like, 13-year-olds always, experiencing massive heartburn after they eat apple pie. Like, if they're for you, dude, keep them in your pocket. Like, don't be like, yeah, those are for me. That's how much of an age gap we are. You're worried about, like, homework, and I'm worried about getting heartburn after I have a slice of apple pie at 6:30 at night. Like, what the fuck? Like, are you kidding me? And the dude's just like, yeah, sorry. Oh, like... I guess, hindsight being what it is, trying to have sex with a 13-year-old, not my brightest moment. And it's just like every time with these fucking dudes. Oh, so the next one was Sea Beach dude. Remember this guy? Mm-hmm. He's the actor. I don't know where these dudes get these cars. He's like, when he shows up, he's like this actor looking to meet this boy so they can shower together, and that's their whole thing. And he pulls up in like a Mercedes, and he's like a background actor. He's like, yeah, I do stand-in work. I'm like, you're driving a Mercedes? Like, that happens so many times. Dude will show up and he's like, yeah, I'm a teacher. And he's driving like this brand new, like, cherry red Corvette. And I'm like, how? Is there money in being like an internet weirdo?
Nowadays, yeah.
Well, yeah, nowadays. But this was early days, man. So dude shows up and like, this guy, like, he cries and he's wearing this gold chain. He's like, so what do you do in movies? He's like, background work. And he's like, what movies? Like, he really is digging it in, man. Chris Hansen knows that this guy is just not going to leave no matter what he does to him. So he's like, tell me what movies you're in. He's like, isn't it weird? He's like, is this your wiener? And he shows him a picture. And he's like, yeah, that's my wiener. And like, yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine what it's like to be in a strange place and a stranger holds up a picture of your genitals and he's like, are these yours? Like, what the fuck? It's like a surreal experience, but it happens so often. It's like so humdrum. It like To Catch a Predator. Like, I can't, like, Chris Hansen, his hands must have held more copies of strangers' genitals than most like low budget porn producers. Like, he has showed people their genitals more often than a doctor.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you're a doctor who exclusively targets like genital herpes, Chris Hansen might give you a run for your money, like showing people their same genitals. Like, this is your penis. Oh yeah, except it's all of the pictures, instead of saying like a medical facility, it just says Yahoo up top. Oh man, that was one of the things that the one guy did too. The one with the three dork piercings. Because Chris is like, did you show her any pictures? Did you show her any pictures? He's like, the ones on my profile. And he's like, what are those of? And he's like, my face, and there's like a pregnant
showed them
pause.
Pictures of some penises.
Yeah, he's like, pictures of my penis. Like, you showed him a penis. He's like, well, no. That's another weird thing, is when dudes will take other dudes' penis pictures and show them. Like, it's one thing to be like, yeah, this is my dong, and to like represent yourself, but then to just go grab any random dong off of like whatever website and be like, yeah, this one's mine. And then you're like trying to actively sleep with this person. You don't think they're going to like see it in real life and be like, wait a minute.
The camera does add 3 inches.
Yeah. It's so crazy. I can't. Okay. So we move along, and then this old dude shows up. This old dude, his screen name is M4 Pixeline. You remember this guy, Stephen Coates? He looks like his hair reminds me of a character that I cannot put a finger on. He's got like white curly hair. It's almost like grandma hair. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, you're like when grandma wakes up and takes her hair out of curlers, that's her. This is the dude's hair. So he shows up and like they blast his website. Like, this is Stephen Coates. He's a songwriter. And like, how desperate, like you're like the absurdity of the situation. A 56-year-old man showing up to wine and dine a 13-year-old, and he brought a mixed CD of his own music.
I'm going to promote myself with my own music while trying to get a 13-year-old.
The crazy. It would be as if like if he wasn't a musician and like he just sold like vinyl siding, like if he brought a book of samples to this 12-year-old, like, hey, 12-year-old, here's a mix CD, give it to your friends. Don't tell them I slept with you, but I'll give you license to tell them about my music. And when people ask, how did you find this dude's music? Don't tell them it was because I made you, touch my dong. Okay, another weird thing about him is like he's the first dude in this episode to like with the loopholes. He's like, we can hang out. And he's like, if you just do oral, you're still a virgin. Good news. Uh-huh. Like that's the silver lining. If you, all these dudes love anal, and they're always asking for it, and it's always there's never any code. Like when they read the transcripts aloud, they say, I want oral, I want anal. It's not like, let's do butt stuff or like suck me off. It's always like, let's do oral sex. It's so weird and clinical. And this is a 12-year-old and you're like, let's have oral sex. And the 12-year-old's like, cool, KEWL. And you're like, where, how do you not see the disconnect in this insanity? Like, are you so driven? Like, yeah, this is definitely a 12-year-old. And I'm like, in my 70s, and here's a picture of my wrinkly old dong, like sprouted, covered in gray pubes. And like in your head, your 70-year-old head, you're like, yeah, this 13-year-old is going to love this old man meat. Like, how deluded do you have to be? It's fucking crazy. Sean, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Oof. Okay, so next guy is not really great. Daniel Polito, he's the big sort of chubby Mexican dude. He shows up and he's like, and Chris,
the one who's actually sat there and watched some of the previous episodes.
Yeah, he shows up and Chris Hansen's like, oh, what are you up to? And the guy's like, nothing. And he's like, nothing or nothing good? Like that same old like work site, like dad joke sort of bullshit. He's like, nothing good. This guy is a dead end. I don't really talk about him, but he does show up and he has something in common with the next dude, which is they both wear hats that need to be blurred. Like, I don't understand how they can be like, yeah, here's Mike's Lemonade that I'm bringing to booze up a 12-year-old. You can say Mike's Lemonade and show that, like, how it's associated with pedophiles on TV. But the dude's hat, they're like, that's where we draw the line. Like, it could have been a Coors Light hat. And they're like, Mike's Hard Lemonade. They know their audience. They don't want to be blurred. They're like, we know our demo. We appeal to dudes with, like, 1980s glasses, puffy hair, and thick mustaches because we know who they're buying it for. But the dude's hat is like the Cubs. They're like, no.
13-year-old moms.
Yeah. Like, what? I just don't get like that weird dichotomy. So like I was saying, the next guy with the blurred hat, he's probably the dumbest of them all. He's the dude who shows up, drives by, and literally watches the previous dude getting arrested.
Somebody else.
Yeah, he rolls by and like mouth hanging open is like, duh. Like they're walking the dude out in handcuffs. And so he calls the decoy and she's like, oh, it's just my neighbor. They got caught selling heroin to kids, which is the most ridiculous. Like, number one, why would they arrest them in your driveway? This dude just blows past all the, like...
And how did the 13-year-old know that they were arrested for that?
Right. Like, how... Like, this 13-year-old is the smartest, like, oh, yeah, they were dealing heroin.
I know it was heroin.
They're the stoolie. Like, they were wearing a wire, maybe. I don't know. This guy is such a fucking moron. And he also does something interesting where when he sits down, he's like, I don't want to do an interview. And keeps doing the interview, but then keeps refusing to do the interview. But then he keeps like, you don't understand this. You don't say, I'm not going to do an interview. And like, literally
continue to answer the questions.
2 seconds. He's like, I don't want to have an interview. And Chris Hansen's like, well, then what are you doing here? Which is a question. You are now engaged in an interview. And the guy's like, hey, I was bored. I was bored.
What's going on?
He says, look at my eyes. I was bored. You know how many times I've been bored and thought, you know what? I'm going to start trolling Yahoo for some 13-year-olds. Never. Never in my life have I been so bored that I was like, time to hit up AIM, or MySpace, click, doing a search for like, ASL 13 female, Riverside, California. Like,
Let me pull my MSN.
Yeah, never have I been so bored where I was like, yep, I guess my only option is children. Are you fucking kidding me? This guy is so stupid. And then the cameras come out and he's like, I don't want to be on camera. And they're like, yeah, it is literally too late. There are 3 cameras in this room you can see, and there's 12 you can't. That guy is such a douche, but Chris Hansen keeps digging it in. He's like, so let me get this straight. And he starts counting off the things. He goes, whoops. He goes, so you drove by and there were cops outside and there was a dude getting arrested. He goes, yeah. He's like, you've seen the other To Catch a Predators because you know who I am. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, you believe there was a drug bust and you still came in and all this other stuff and this guy also was caught by perverted justice before the whole Dateline thing.
He was given warnings.
Yeah, there are some gold member perverted justice club members who like got caught before the Dateline thing, which is incredible. So that means like people were just digging around without Dateline, without the cops being like, yeah, I'm 13 and I want dick. And they were like, and they caught some of these dudes again. Like one guy, he's like, oh my God, one of the dudes, like their chat logs are so long. They're like hundreds of pages for some of these dudes. And it's just
they were like trying hardcore just to get these kids.
So sad. Okay, so now this is when we get like a little tour of the RV next door. It's like, the cops are set up next door in an RV and they got like this mini little base and everything. And that's when they start stacking the pedophiles. And
it's a little booking area. They got like 3 or 4 different tables.
Yeah, it's great. Like I love the booking procedures because they always ask them. They always ask them.
All that counts.
Yeah, like it's so. Jesus Christ. So this is the first. Okay, this may be like. I think they've done 3 before. So this is the hat trick that shows up. So Chris Hansen's like, so check this out, guys. He's like, here's one here parked across the street. Here's one here parked up the street. And here's the other guy walking up the walk. And this is, I think, one of the youngest predators. He's like a 19-year-old. He does no interview. Like, he gets spooked immediately. But what this does give us is like, so 19-year-old dude runs, dude in the Dropkick Murphy shirt gets pushed up against his SUV. And then the other dude, we don't care about the other dude because the guy in the SUV, this is my favorite part of the episode. He's handcuffed. He's sitting on the ground. He's looking up into the eyes of the arresting officer. And he goes, what do you do for a living? And the guy goes, work with the Department of Justice, Homeland Security. And the guy goes,
criminal investigator.
Yeah, he goes, criminal investigator. He goes, great. Like, that's the arresting officer's like, just so exacerbated. Like, he's such a fucking, oh my God. And like, just imagine like I always think about like the secondary effects because like as they're walking him away, he's wearing like a Dropkick Murphys t-shirt. And I wonder if anybody in the Dropkick Murphys was like, fuck, like watching this on TV and they're like, shit, like it's the worst publicity ever.
Have to get on there, make their own media. We do not support this.
Like they're like, hey man, we don't like, obviously they have nothing to do, but it's like so crazy. Oh my God. So then, next one's not so hot. We have the little kid who shows up with his buddy, Sebastian. The two like Hispanic kids with the dark hair, and they bring the 1/6er, and the kid starts like crying immediately, and he's like, well, what are you doing here? And like, who are you? And the guy like is slamming a monster. Like he's enjoying every bit of this shit. Like his friend. He's like, oh, I'm just a tag along. Glug, 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 glug. And meanwhile, the other kid's like shitting his pants. And he's like, I swear I wasn't going to have sex with her, sir. I mean, but like I feel like
we're coming here for.
Yeah, the condoms were shoved in between the bottles of the mics in the carrying case. Like, but these kids.
I love half of their excuses. It was one of them was, I think I was misled. They didn't tell me that they were
the first
13.
dude. First dude walks in. He's a trucker. He's like, yeah, I showed up to suck a 13-year-old off named Dave. And he's like, I've got 47 pages of chat here that says you want to suck off a kid named Dave. And he's like, does that sound familiar? And he goes, possibly. Like, what? What do you mean possibly? Like, I might have wanted to suck off a kid. I might have. I'm not saying it's 100%. It's not ironclad, but there's like a 15% chance that I wanted to wrap my lips around like, what? These guys don't like think. They're just like, can I see some ID? Like, what? You want to see some ID? Like, you show up to like prey on a child and you're like, excuse me, can I see some identification? No, you're in a weird house. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Those dudes were like, can I please see your identification?
I feel like this is wrong, but you know what? I'll skip it this time.
What if, like, let's say Chris Hansen pulls out his press pass and he's like, I'm Chris Hansen. And they go, aha, thank you for showing me your ID. Now let's continue the interview. Like, what are you going to do with the dude's ID? Like, you're going to let him into your club? You fucking moron. Okay, so the next guy I like, this kid, Six Pack O'Callaghan is his name. He's the 26-year-old who has like the big weed wanted poster on the back of his shirt. And the thing is, like, his excuse for why he wasn't actually going to bang a child was he's like, I'm so dirty. I was going to take a shower. My hair is greasy. And he's like, all this other shit.
Oh, right when he walked in, the decoy's like, I've already showered. You know, do you want to?
Well, no, that was the actor. This is the guy who like goes in and immediately washes his hands.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He's kind of cracked out. And Chris Hansen's like, the paper towels are right there. Gotcha. But the thing is, like, he's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I came by to tell her I was too old for her to have sex with. And then immediately whips out some Bacardi and he's like, this is really watered down. Like, so which is it? Did you come here to say we can't fuck? Or did you come here to party like a rock star with your Bacardi 101, you fucking idiot? Like, if you're going to lie, don't immediately be like, here's the booze that I was going to lube up your daughter with. Like, what? Say, no, I wasn't going to do it. Don't be like, I wasn't going to do it, and here are the rubbers, and here's the thing, and here's the yank pump that I have to use. Like, are you fucking...
I'm not going to do it, I swear, here. Just
and then
3 of these.
He has one of my favorite reactions to seeing his own penis. Because he's like, Chris Hansen's like, did you send her this? And he goes, oh my. Oh.
That
he's
was
like,
a good picture.
He goes, I didn't know I sent that. And he goes, really? You didn't know? And he's like, well, yeah, I did, but... And then he just sort of trails off. And like, yeah, what would you say? You're 26 and here's like this, Emmy award winning journalist showing you a picture of your own penis. What do you say to him? Like, yeah, I mean, I could have, there's a little too much hair on the balls. Like, yeah, is this your dick? And you say, yeah, I
could have made it look a little better. Sorry.
And you're like, oh, I love it when he hands it to him too, and he makes him take it, and they're like,
they're really, like, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah, like they're at a Sears, and like, here are the proofs of your family photos, and you're like, this is my penis, all right. Holy shit,
that looks familiar.
Oh god. Okay, so the next dude, I feel like
I miss this look. I haven't seen him in a couple years.
Oh god. So this next dude is like. He reminded me of Gene Simmons. Producer Paul is his screen name. So dude shows up and he's one of these dudes who's slick and he's like, I'm a music producer, but he's actually just like a guitar salesman. Mm-hmm. And he does his whole interview over his shoulder. Like he sits down with his like face to the door. So when Chris Hansen comes down, he's at his back. He does the whole thing like over his shoulder, like he's at a Pert Plus commercial. And he's like, what are you doing here?
Crossed over.
Yeah, and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, my computer flipped out, and I thought she was 24.
I thought I was talking to a couple different people.
And he's like, well, here's what's, whatever. And he's like, maybe you mean it flipped out when he told your age, because he's 40, and you said you were 24. And he's like, I think I meant the wrong address. And I'm like, what? Like, what are the coincidences that someone under your screen name... talk to a child, exchange this address, and you showed up, but it's just like, I don't even know why I'm here. I love those excuses. Like, why are you here? And the answer is always like to get down and dirty with a child. But the answer is always like, I don't know. What? Where am I? Like as if they just got hit on the head with a cartoon hammer and they're like, what? Like they're just popping out of amnesia.
Or you get the nice classic, I was bored.
Yeah, like I love that I was bored. Like, oh my god, all these like weak ass excuses. So his was kind of weak, and it's whatever. So this is one of my favorites too because he bills himself as an academic. So guy from Mars '83, the Sikh Indian guy who shows up. And he's like, Chris Hansen comes out and the dude's like, well, is this an interview? He's like, that's perfect. I'm perfect. I love doing interviews. And Chris Hansen's like, oh, good.
Oh, beautiful. Watch this.
And he goes, so why did you come here to have sex with a kid? And he's like, well, you can talk. You can tell a child that you want them to lick your balls, but unless like they touch my balls, I haven't broken a law. And Chris Hansen's like, well, spoiler alert. But it's like the weirdest edit.
They try to clear it's not illegal if it's just talking.
Yeah, he's like, I can say all these horrible, disgusting things to a child, but unless you catch me in bed, I have broken no laws. And he's like, oh, so you're a lawyer. And he's like, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty much into academics. What the fuck does that mean? What are your credentials? Like, imagine going to a job interview and they say, oh, well, what are your credentials? Well, I'm pretty much into academics. Oh, you're hired, you fucking idiot. But then he's like, let me inform you about the law. And like, you're waiting for Chris to launch into a speech of like, here's how it goes. But they just immediately cut to him like slowly walking down the driveway and getting arrested. And he's like, I guess I don't have to.
Come out of the sides.
Yeah. And the guy, like, this is one of the times they aren't shouting. Like, the guy's like, okay, turn around. They just slap the cuffs on him. He's like, please let me go. I've never committed a crime before. And he's like, oh, really? This is your first time? And he's like, yeah. And he goes, okay, good. He's like, please believe me as they're carrying him away. Oh my God, this guy. I'm very clean. I've never done this before in past.
First time getting caught.
Yeah, I mean, like, you don't get like an oops card. Like the first guy you kill, you're like, this is the first time. And they go, oh, well, bye.
I guess we'll let you off with a warning this time.
Thanks for stopping by. Okay, here's the weirder they are, the better. So this dude.
David's got a lot of favorites for this one.
Well, that's the thing. Like, for what it is, the interviews could be better, but all of their weird characters are good. So this dude, Hard Chuck 1, 65-year-old dude, shows up to the decoy's house en route from his mother's house. Like, he was visiting his mom, and he's like, bye, mommy, I'm 65, I'm going home to suck off a child, and shows up at this guy's house. And Chris Hansen's like, why are you here? And Chuck's like, oh, I am selling a property. And I was speaking to a gentleman, and he wants to buy my property. And Chris Hansen's like, how's a 13-year-old going to buy your property? He's like, well, I didn't ask the age. Like, if you were talking to a 13-year-old, you wouldn't be like, this is a fucking kid. Whatever.
You're 65. You've been around the block a couple of times.
Yeah, like,
you should know.
This is a weak-ass lie. And he's like, well, now, then, spoiler alert, I got the chat. And he's like, okay. So he's like, so what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I don't see anything wrong with caressing and cuddling. What?
Just a gentle touch. Like, no.
He's so weird. And then he's like, yeah, so, full disclosure, I read this book about all these weird sycophantic things. And Chris Hansen, like, can't control himself. He's like, what the fuck? You read this book? What are you fucking talking about? And he's like, it's entertainment. It's, doctors and young patients and all this stuff. And he's like, oh. He's like,
and this is where his fantasy becomes reality.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm Chris Hansen, and he's like, it's so crazy. Okay, so finally, at this point in the episode, after all these dudes are rolling through, we finally get to see some like cop footage. We get to see dudes running, like they're like, freeze, all like that's the stuff you want.
I think altogether throughout this episode, they caught, like, was it 30, 35 people, something like that?
And
I would say after, like, the first 15 or so, that's when they started really showing.
Huge amount of dudes. And so the first dude they show the behind the scenes for, I'm really bummed they don't show his interview. He's the guy with, like, the welding goggles.
Oh, the big dude, like 6'5"?
No, not that dude. The skinny guy who, like, you don't see his interview. And so the guy, he's sitting at the folding table, and the guy's like, so you've had sex with men before? And he goes, but it happens. That guy.
Oh, yeah.
We don't get to see his interview. And the detective is like, filling out his paper, and he's like, so you had sex with men before? And the guy's like, it happens. And he goes, it happens? And he goes,
real pain in the ass.
And he goes, yeah. And he's like, does your wife know about that? And he's like, no. Like, surprisingly, I sometimes accidentally fuck guys, but I don't tell my wife. Oh, but the big dude was funny.
Sorry, I really can't talk with a mouth full.
Yeah. These fucking guys, like, so the big dude, like, kind of looks like Lou Ferrigno's cousin. You know what I mean? Like, they're leading his ass to the RV, and, like, he's like 70s Lou Ferrigno's cousin. He's got, like, the long sideburns, and they're patting him down, and the detective is like, what are these pills in your pocket?
I can't tell you, sir. I'm too embarrassed.
He goes, I'm too embarrassed to say, sir. I'm like, you just got busted trying to have sex with a 13-year-old. You're like, I'm too embarrassed to say what pills are.
You can't get much worse than this.
Yeah, like, you've already hit rock bottom, dude. What are these pills? And he's like, are they Viagra? And he goes, yeah. And then he just like they set him down in the seat, and he just like
breaks down,
he
like
cries,
snot crying,
like snot crying baby. Oh my god! And he's like, and the detective's like, calm down. He's like getting all worked up, ain't gonna help anybody. And he's like this 270-pound dude who's just like, like sitting on this folding chair in the parking lot of a Target as he gets processed for being an online predator. It's so fucking crazy.
See, and watching this, at least me, I was sitting there thinking, it's like, okay, was he upset because he wasn't caught? Or was he upset because, he realized, oh crap, I almost slept with a 13-year-old?
No, it's always the caught, because in they're the way they act beforehand. So like the guy who comes walking and like, so that sort of leads into what I've got coming up next is like, so they talk to all the guys, and then they start going through their cars, and they pull out like, dildos and cameras and lube and shit. And it's all this damning evidence. And then like here in the episode is where it kind of takes a darker tone when they start showcasing like the actual like registered criminals.
Mm-hmm.
And then they give us an update on the teacher. Like they touch base with him because here's the thing. I don't know why he thought it was a good idea to go back to school after being like arrested for being a predator, preying upon the age of the people you're teaching. Like, just call in sick to do something. Don't like it would be like tonight a cop comes in and busts you and like throws you in jail, and the next day you're out, and you go into school.
Like you know this is going to get back to your boss.
Yeah, like you're just sitting on a ticking time bomb. And they interview some of the students and like, yeah, he looked pretty depressed. And like, obviously, why would you go back to your school?
They did the interview with like the quick interview with like two of the students. They're like, yeah, nope, he was weird. We caught him.
Yeah, weirdos.
And
it's so strange. So now here comes our first like dangerous dude. Screen name trying to be normal. David Allen, 48. He is the guy with all the dad jokes.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy who looks like, I don't know. He looks like 80s dad, 80s sitcom dad almost. And he is
gives a whole new meaning to Married with Children.
He's such a weirdo. This dude, he's so fucking strange. Like, you're already caught. Like, Chris Hansen's got you. And he's like, hey man, have you done this before? And he's like, oh yeah, tons of times. He's like, oh, I mean, no, I have never. He's like, have you ever met teenagers? He's like, yeah, 13 or 15 or you can't talk up a paragraph of all the children you've gone and met and then be like, just kidding. Just that last 2 minutes, I retract that. And then he goes on to say, he's like, sometimes when I'm trolling for underage children, I show up and it's a dude and he laughs. That's not a defense. I was legitimately out there trying to find a 13-year-old and I show up and it's some 16-year-old and he's like, laughing at me. What the fuck?
Wasn't this the same guy who was also saying that, as long as they give consent, it's okay?
I don't think it was that guy. This was the guy who was like, he also got like, because after they catch him or whatever, they're like, he got put in jail for like stalking an ex-wife. And he was also the guy who like after the cameras come out, he's like, oh, I'll shove that camera down your throat. And Chris Hansen's like, I don't think you want to do that. And he actually asked, he's like, why? I'm going to shove that camera down your throat. Chris Hansen says, I don't think you're going to do that. He goes, why? What? That's the question you have for me right now? And he's the first guy who says, he's like, obviously you're free to go. And so there's that awkward moment. And he's like, can I talk to you alone outside? Are you fucking kidding? No, you fucking cannot talk to me outside alone. And he's like, the cameras can't be turned off. He's like, the door's that way. Fucking A.
Yeah, go ahead and take 2 steps outside. That's no problem. We'll watch everything else from here.
Yeah, like, what? Are you fucking a weirdo? So, okay, there's one guy, you also don't see his, like, I think they catch him, like, he never makes it into the house. He's the dude who, for some reason, is wearing, like, a beanie, but it's just barely placed on his head, so it looks like he's 9 feet tall. And he's like handcuffed and he's like talking to this cop whose arms are firmly crossed and he's chewing gum like he doesn't give a fuck. And this guy's like, well, when I saw the Dateline piece, and I thought, well, this could be a setup, And so the guy's like, the cop, I fucking love this cop. Super, like, sharpest flat top you've ever seen. He's wearing a bulletproof vest, and he's just standing there like, I don't give a fuck about you, dude. You're a piece of shit. And he goes, okay, so then why did you come out here? And he goes, curiosity. He goes, okay. Like, curiosity is always another fallback. They say, what are you doing out here? Trying to meet a 14-year-old? Like, I was curious. I've seen 14-year-olds. You want to see a 14-year-old? Go to the mall. That'll satiate your curiosity. You need to sneak into somebody's house at 2 a.m. and be like, is there lemonade on the counter? You fucking weirdos.
Where's those brownies?
Yeah. Oh my God, the brownies. Like, that's another thing. Like, if you show up and everything is like literally too good to be true, like you show up and there's like fucking red velvet cupcakes and sweet tea, and you're like, what a considerate victim. Are you fucking kidding me? No, like, I get they were like, maybe it's like bait, like a trap. Because once you commit to that glass of sweet tea, like, it's hard to leave, maybe. Like, when you see Chris Hansen, you're like, I want to run, but I got this sweet tea. I got a half a glass that I got to finish.
Might as well stay and finish it.
Yeah, this guy. Oh, next one is the biggest liar, I think, in the series. Robert Lyons, 68 years old, a registered sex offender, tells the kid he's 28. Like, he is nothing. He looks like a baseball that is nothing but wrinkles. Like, his head is this perfect round sphere of wrinkles and these weird little beady eyes that are always shooting around like chameleon eyes. And he's like, yeah, I'm 28. And he shows up, gray hair, and he's like, what the fuck? He shows up and he's like, so, because obviously they pull literally everything they can about the dudes before they show up.
If you're 28, that gender fluid tree hits you like a fucking brick.
Holy shit. This dude, and like, that's the thing, they're like, this is his sex offender picture, and it's him, and his eyes are all crazy. He's got the crazy eyes. And so he's like, so you got done up before, obviously, because I got the paper right here. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, so what'd you do? What was up with that? And he's like, got with a kid. What do you say? Like, I understand you want to, like, but this guy was so weird. Like, he looked like the Crypt Keeper, kind of. Very, like, dry, and he's like, ah.
See, you have that level of weird, being an internet predator, period. But then, like,
but then he goes beyond.
Repeating.
Yeah, he's like already a weirdo, but then, like, when he takes off his glasses and he's like this hunchback little homunculus with his little chameleon eyes, and he's just like, he's like, what are these weird things you said? And he's like, he uses a strange term. He's like, it's rhetoric. He's like, do you have rubbers? And he's like, I don't know, I don't bang dudes, but you can bang me. And he's like, what do you have to say about that? And the guy's like, it's rhetoric. And he's like, what?
So it's not a give and take option.
It's such a bizarre, it's an old timey word. He's like, oh, that's like the cat's pajamas. Like a 70-year-old trying to come have sex with a kid, and then he like Charleston's his way out the door. All these, but the fact that he's 68 and he's telling him I'm 28, and he looks like everybody's like weird uncle. Like, no way you're like 28. You're like, oh, I'm just out of college. Oh, really? Your eyebrows are all gray and they're all 3 inches long? You fucking weirdo. Like, not even a 13-year-old is that stupid.
Nowadays, I kind of question it.
So, so the next one is like the weird dude John, 4 names. John Pierre Michael Weary. And he's the one who sort of rounds out. They spend a lot of time on him because they go interview like one of his victims, and it's kind of a drag, and he gets taken down hard because he's the dude with the blood. And here's the other thing I don't understand. Like, you're getting caught by the police. I understand there's cameras because they're always like, what did you get sent up for before? He's like, I don't want to tell you. And he's like, I'm a cop, I'll know. And he's like, I want to stand in front of the camera. And I'm like, you don't think that later this dude you're talking to will give them all that information? Like, don't be so coy. Like, be like, oh, well, I don't know. I could have been anything. I could have been doing anything in Portland that got me arrested. Like, come on, man.
You've been blatantly caught. Just accept it. Do your
he's like, I don't want
to go away.
I like that. That's like, I guess, the salt in the wound, because as soon as he's like, he looks into the camera and he's like, I don't want to tell you because they're here. And then you hear Chris Hansen's voice like basically lay out the dude's rap sheet just to be like, fuck you, dude. We got you. And the last one, he's also an interesting character, Greg Carnos. He's like that software manager. He's the guy who keeps asking for ID. He's the OG ID dude. Because he's like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I don't know. Can I see your ID? And he's like, you like to see my ID? And he's like, so you like older guys? And he, like he's like, no. And he's like, no, I'm reading from the sex chat that you had with the child. And they interview some cop, like he'd been busted in 1999 for 7 weird acts. And they talked to this cop. Everybody was like, get your best flat top on because Dateline is coming to town. This episode has the most flat tops per capita. So they asked this flat top dude and he's like, yeah. So I show up on the scene, and there he is with his crank out in a parking lot, yanking it to some high school students. And so I walk up to him and I say, hey, you yanking your crank to these kids? And he goes, yep. And I go, what about these kids? And he goes, nope, they're too young. And he goes, okay. And I'm like, what the fuck?
One's okay, but one's not.
That's where he draws the line. But like that was a fucking layup. Like, you know that true crime show is like the first 48. It's like, if we don't get all the clues, if we don't get a suspect in the first 48, it's fucked. This didn't take 48 seconds. Cop rolls up, dude's crank is in his hand. He's like, is that you? And he goes, yes. Bum bum. Credits. And he's like, well, he's like, so you don't want to look at these 10-year-olds? He's like, no, I just mess around with high school girls.
Thank you, 88 Novak.
Yeah, right? Like, that's what 88 Paradise remind me of. She reminds me of Novak, not Cabot. Oh, my God. And then also, since this is like one of the earlier episodes, they're like still trying to push, like, they're not solely doing it for ratings. So they talk to this guy looks so disheveled. That sex doctor, he's like head of the sex malfunction at the Mayo Clinic. That huge, he's like a corpse grub of a man. He's like this big pasty looking dude. He's like missing teeth. And Chris Hansen sits down with him and he's like, well, what can we do about these dudes? He's like, should they all go to jail? And he's like, well, there's nothing about jail that helps. He's like, they need treatment and yada yada. And he's doing his whole thing. It's just like so much filler because the dude, like they show like there's B-roll of him like looking through a cabinet and he's like looking through files and I'm like, what the fuck is this for? Like the guy's like, well, they're sexual predators and we got to make them not do that. I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. That's the whole fucking criminal justice system. Like burglars want them not to burgle. Like we get it. He's like, my whole job is to make him stop committing crimes. No shit. Great. Thanks for the update. Like,
I didn't know that.
It's such a surface level interview where he's like, yeah, some of them reoffend and some don't. Bye, Dateline. And he's just like this completely unprofessional dude. I don't like him. He's like the worst part of the episode, and it leaves you with a bad taste in your mouth because you're just like, he looks like this toad sitting there in this like ill-fitting brown suit, and he's the most disgusting dude to run a sex therapy. Why is it all sex therapists are weird looking? Like Dr. Ruth, she's like this little, like, she looks like a
hermit looking thing.
Yeah, she looks like a boglin. Like imagine getting sex advice from one of the creatures from the Dark Crystal. Like that was her. She's
Bog
like
Witch from what is that? Army of Darkness.
Yeah, or like one of the Skeksis. Like one of the Skeksis is like because she was like straight up. She would like be like, yeah, hand jobs, and here's how to do it, and like.
I'll try and picture that in sleep tonight.
Yeah, imagine like a 4-foot tall little Skeksy lady with her big robe, and she's like with her little beak, and she's like furiously working the crank of some dude with her claw hands because she's a Muppet. This is the weirdest sex therapist ever.
Cough.
Yeah, they're all weird. They're all weird looking. All sex therapists. So yeah, that was the first episode of not technically the first episode of To Catch a Predator I give a shit about.
Right.
Not as good as later ones because they get like really good, but I feel like another disservice they do, and you can see it in this episode too, is they give away like the whole point of like the commercial break is like come back for something zany, but it's always like you won't believe what this dude did, and then they immediately show what the dude did. In every one of them, if somebody does something zany or something zany happens, like the one where the dude gets naked, not in this episode, but in an upcoming episode. It's like they've been playing it the whole episode, like this mystery, like what does this guy do? And like right before his commercial break, it's like you won't believe how this overexposed this image is, and he just shows the dude like Bigfoot walking naked through the house. And I'm like, well, why did you do that? Like, come back after this because you're gonna want to see this dude's shaft. And then like, bam, there it is.
Damn it, Chewie.
Yeah, now there's no reason to come. That's so funny too. Like when he's walking naked through the house, he does look like that Zapruder Bigfoot footage. Like where he's like this hairy
it's
dude.
It's all out of focus.
Yeah, looking over his shoulder like he's on the hunt for berries or grubs or whatever. And Chris Hansen's like, your dick, I see it.
He was on the hunt for something. It wasn't Chris Hansen.
That's another, like that's the Whereas, like, let's say To Catch a Predator, you're gold member if Perverted Justice caught you before, and then Chris Hansen's like, hey man, you did this before, you're fucked. You're platinum member if Chris Hansen shows you a picture of your own penis, and you're black diamond level if Chris Hansen sees your penis in real life. Two dudes show up naked across all of these things, and like that is black diamond status. Like, it's one thing if you're like, oh, gotcha, but now you're back. Like that's the Diners Club card. There's just a repeat offender. Like getting the photo ID of your dong, that's another level. But then like having Chris Hansen, to open a door and see a man standing in a three-piece suit, and there you are, dong to the wind, like surrounded by fancy furniture in this $4 million mansion, and there you are, like, boom, it's inside you. Like the amount of fear, it's just like gone. I can't imagine like Chris Hansen being like, dong! Oh. The amount of control you would have to walk through a door to see a nude man and not be like, ah! It's crazy. So, once again, what's the name of the organization, Sean? How can people get involved?
Organization is called Our Underground Railroad. Currently, we are just looking at getting people involved on Facebook. They have a website.
So we're like awareness at this point?
Yeah, right now, and they're doing a lot of protests and stuff all across the world. Like, it's a huge global organization. I think right now they have almost 1 million members. And get more and more people involved every day. Yeah,
it's now that everybody's getting woke, and like I don't know why it took literally civilization crumbling before everyone started like giving a shit. Mm-hmm. Like maybe Weinstein was like this weird wizard who was like keeping all of these things at bay, and that like his spell was broken when they sent him to prison. So now everybody's coming out and they're like, hey, yeah, maybe we shouldn't deal with injustice.
So a little something my wife just brought to my attention. Looks like in the past 6 years of existence, our Underground Railroad has rescued 4,100 victims.
Wow.
And assisted in the arrest of more than 2,300 traffickers around the world. We are empowering the collective lives, helping rescue the lives of more than 100,000 survivors.
That's some serious shit. Like, those are hard numbers. And here's the beauty about it. Like, there's no downside to helping at all ever, and I think the corollary here is there's no downside to like To Catch a Predator, because like I'm also a fan of true crime. I don't know if you are, Sean, or not.
Oh yeah,
you guys are. So with true crime, there's always that little bit of doubt, like if there was a murder, if there was a kidnap, any of the true crime, there's always a little bit of doubt because you weren't there. To Catch a Predator is so fucking satisfying because you get to see the whole crime from start to finish.
Right.
Like, there's no, like, I don't know, like, jury of their peers. This is straight up, like, they've got pictures of the dude's dongs. Like, it's such an airtight case that you can't, there's no, like, there's nothing to feel bad about. You're not like, but what if? No, they have phone calls and they have the pictures and shit. Like, it's the perfect.
It's all right there in their chat. And then... Yeah. Like one of the sheriffs when they were talking about it's whenever the Predator was bringing items, it helped like, solidify their intent.
No matter how, whatever case or true crime you get interested in, there's always a little bit of you that's like, I don't know. But these, like, it's almost eating like pure butter. It's just so rich and creamy because you get the whole story. Like, if you love true crime, seldom do you get a definitive, like, resolution. This is like, you know what's happening from the jump, and it's like watching SVU. You know the good guys are going to win, because there's Chris Hansen, and there he is with the fucking chat log thick as a phone book, and a fucking cornucopia of dick pics. And you know, like, yeah, there's no chance that,
you're
like...
not getting out of this.
Yeah, but, in reality, since he fucked up with the Murphy, Texas thing, which we'll get into, it's a tarnished legacy. But I still enjoy the content. Anyway, guys, Sean, thanks for coming on the show.
It's always a pleasure.
We're definitely going to have to do the other ones because they do get better, and I do like the characters better. Characters. Like, this is a drama. I love that guy who shows up in a Corvette and wants to bang a child. He's my favorite character. Like, but I do, like, I love all of the law enforcement dudes. There's this guy named Lee DeBrabander. I've heard his name so many times. He's just like this gruff, he's like your perfect police dude. He's like, no nonsense. He's like, we suspected this individual of being a sexual predator, and he was apprehended at 6:47, military time and all this other stuff. He's like, we wanted them to blah, blah, blah. I love it. I love all these people, and it's a bummer that it was just handled so poorly and it died so quickly. Plus, it's like weird and gray area, and it has its detractors, but whatever. It's still fun to point at a dude who shows up in like a Looney Tunes jacket and then has to deal with Chris Hansen in a 3-piece suit. What the fuck? Oh my god! Oh my favorite ones are when they make them when they go to the beach and they're sitting in these beach chairs because you're already feeling exposed and you're sitting there with Chris Hansen and your ass is literally 2 inches above the sand and like beach is right there and you're just like a fat little sand crab being grilled about what a creep you are. Oh my god. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. If you want to get in contact with us, you know how it's fistfulpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. If you give a shit, we got a Patreon. I guess that's it. So once again, I want to thank Sean for coming on. I think we can probably push through this. It's fun. I do love ragging on these weirdos because it's like, I don't want to say it's like reality television because it's not that produced, but it's definitely almost like the Real Housewives for me. I'm just like, oh, there's what's his nuts? The guy who pretends to be, he's one of my favorites too. I'll just real quick aside. Dude's like, yeah, I'm a cop. I'm a lieutenant. And it turns out, no, he was fired. And so he's just like this dude
for being the creep.
Yeah, for being a creep. And he's one of the few, I think only 2 dudes get tased ever. Long Beach Dude 19, I remember his screen name because he is one of the greats of all time. Because he gets tased and he falls over like a sequoia. He goes, perfect. The perfect tasing. The other guy runs around and is a real pussy, but whatever. So anyway, guys, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.
Or they try to.
Fistful of Podcasts Radio.